last night's episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live didn't just stir up public opinion, it was like a blaze igniting, torching all expectations and turning the stage into a battlefield of truth. What started as a routine political interview quickly erupted into the most dramatic showdown in late-night television history, leaving an indelible mark. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. Under the glaring stage lights, the audience roared as if the room might burst. Applause mixed with boos created a chaotic symphony. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, stepped out with a razor-sharp presence, her blonde hair and steel-bright eyes commanding attention. Her red suit blazed like a defiant flame, declaring she wasn't there to back down. Across from her stood Jimmy Kimmel, the king of late-night TV, his signature smile masking his intent to turn this interview into a peak performance of satire. The audience was divided from the start. One corner of the studio chanted slogans supporting the president, while the other cheered Kimmel with raucous laughter. The camera panned slowly across Leavitt's face, unwavering, exuding icy confidence. Kimmel stood behind his desk, his black suit sleek, his eyes glinting like a hunter ready to cast his net. As the music faded, the stage lights zeroed in on the center, where Jimmy Kimmel stood behind his desk, his smile radiant but his eyes sharp as a blade. "Welcome to an evening full of surprises," he began, his tone smooth but laced with sarcasm. The audience roared with laughter, some whistling as Kimmel tossed out his first jab. "Tonight we have a guest from the White House. Hope she brought a map to navigate my questions." The crowd erupted, but at the edge of the stage, Karoline Leavitt sat motionless, her lips curling into a confident smile, as if she'd heard these lines 1,000 times. Leavitt stood, striding to the guest chair with steady poise, her red suit blazing under the lights like a declaration of war. She shook Kimmel's hand, a brief but firm grip, then sat, legs crossed neatly, her gaze never leaving her opponent. The audience fell silent, sensing the heat of this silent showdown. Kimmel leaned in, hands on his desk, his tone still light but loaded with intent. "Karoline, welcome to the show. What's it like being the face of the White House, or should I say the cleanup crew for the president's tweet storms?" Laughter erupted from the audience, but Leavitt didn't flinch. She smiled, her voice clear and sharp as a blade. "What's it like? I'm proud, Jimmy. Proud to represent millions of Americans, not the people sitting here twisting the truth for laughs." The studio fell quiet, with only scattered applause from her supporters in the crowd. Kimmel raised an eyebrow, his smile faltering for a second before he regained his composure. "Oh, coming in strong. I like that. But honestly, don't you ever feel like your job is a bit like doing comedy?" Leavitt tilted her head, her eyes gleaming. "Comedy? No, Jimmy. I leave that to you. I'm here to say what needs to be said, not to perform tricks for the audience." Another wave of applause broke out, louder this time, forcing Kimmel to raise a hand to calm the crowd. The camera zoomed in on his face, still smiling, but a flicker of tension crossed his eyes. Leavitt sat upright, her gaze locked on Kimmel, like a gladiator who'd drawn her sword, ready for the next strike. The stage lights seemed to burn brighter as Jimmy Kimmel leaned forward, his smile still in place, but his eyes sharpening, like a card player about to play his ace. "Karoline, you say you represent Americans," he began, his tone light but loaded with subtext. "But when the president's policies drive up prices, how do you explain that to the people struggling out there?" The audience waited in silence, some whispering to each other, sensing the shift from jest to genuine challenge. Karoline Leavitt sat upright, hands resting lightly on her lap, her eyes locked on Kimmel as if he were the only target in her sights. "Jimmy, rising prices are a global issue, not just in America," she replied, her voice calm but cutting like a polished blade. "We're protecting jobs, shielding our economy from foreign dependence. Have you ever talked about the millions who kept their jobs because of our policies, or do you just pick numbers that make your audience laugh?" A section of the audience erupted in applause, cheers rising from her supporters. Kimmel shifted in his seat, trying to interject with a quip. "Oh, I love numbers, especially when they crash like the stock market." Laughter rang out, but it was weaker than expected, and Leavitt didn't let him stretch the moment. "Market fluctuations are normal, Jimmy," she continued, her voice resonant, drowning out the scattered chuckles. "But you know what's not normal? People like you spending entire shows twisting the truth instead of asking real questions. The audience split again. Some stood to clap, others booed, creating a chaotic wave of sound. Kimmel raised a hand to calm them, but his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. Real questions, huh? He shot back, his tone sharper. Fine. How do you explain the president constantly making claims that are, let's say, hard to verify, to be polite? Leavitt smiled, a cold but confident grin. Polite? That's a new word for you, isn't it? She said, drawing laughs from a few audience members, this time at her wit. I'm not here to play word games, Jimmy. The president says what he believes, and I clarify what needs clarifying. But if you want to talk about hard to verify, why not address how your show edits words to turn everything into a punchline? The stage shook with applause, louder than ever, forcing Kimmel to pause to regain his rhythm. The camera caught his face, still smiling, but his lips tightened. Not giving Kimmel a chance to respond, Leavitt turned to the audience, her voice like a sword slicing through the air. Folks, I know you came here for fun, but you deserve more than cheap jokes. You deserve to hear the truth about our country, about what we're doing, about what really matters. The crowd erupted, many standing, chanting Karoline. Kimmel tried to cut in. Hey, this is a comedy show, not a political forum, but his voice was drowned out by the crowd's roar. Leavitt looked straight at him, her gaze piercing. If this is just comedy, why are you scared when I speak the truth? Kimmel regained his composure, leaning closer, his tone now tinged with bitterness. The truth. You talk about truth when the whole country sees you standing behind someone who's made everything a mess. Don't you get tired of covering for him every day? The question landed like a bomb, and the audience held its breath, awaiting Leavitt's response. She didn't blink, didn't waver, only smiled faintly before replying. Covering. I'm not covering anything, Jimmy. I'm standing up for the people you and your kind ignore. The workers, the families, the people who believe in this country. What about you? What do you stand for besides laughs and ratings? The stage felt like it was on fire. The audience clapped fiercely, some shouting in support, shaking the studio. Kimmel tried to keep his smile, but his eyes showed clear discomfort. You're good, Karoline, he said, his tone reluctant. But if you're so confident, why not answer straight? Do you really believe the president is doing a good job, or is that just your job talking? Leavitt tilted her head, her eyes never leaving Kimmel, and answered instantly, I believe in what we're doing, building a stronger America. What about you, Jimmy? Do you believe in what you say every night, or are you just reading a script for a paycheck? The applause roared again like thunder, drowning out Kimmel, as he tried to interject. The camera zoomed in on Leavitt's face. No trace of fear, only absolute confidence. Kimmel's eyes began to waver. All right, he said, his voice straining to stay cheerful. You want to play? Let's see how you handle this. He signaled his team, and a large screen behind lit up, ready to play a clip from one of Leavitt's White House press briefings. But Leavitt didn't flinch. She sat there, her gaze icy, like a warrior poised for the next strike. The large screen behind the stage lit up, playing a clip from one of Karoline Leavitt's White House press briefings. The footage showed her at the podium, slightly hesitant while addressing the impact of tariffs, cleverly edited to highlight her moment of unease. A reporter in the clip smirked, and the video froze just as Leavitt seemed at a loss for words. The audience erupted in laughter, spurred on by Jimmy Kimmel, who raised his hand like a gladiator landing a critical blow. Karoline, is this the truth you're talking about? He asked, his tone triumphant. Looks like you were scrambling when a reporter asked about prices spiking 15% because of the president's tariffs. Karoline Leavitt sat upright, her eyes sharp as a blade, locking onto Kimmel, as if he'd just walked into her trap. That's disappointing, Jimmy, she replied, her voice slow but cutting, resonating through the studio. You had to dig for hours to find 5 seconds of me pausing, but you didn't dare show the other 10 minutes of that briefing, where I gave the numbers. Tariffs created 2.3 million manufacturing jobs last year per the Department of Labor's report. Want me to repeat that figure? A section of the audience exploded in applause, cheers drowning out the scattered laughter. Kimmel raised an eyebrow, his smile faltering, but he pressed on. Jobs? You know Americans are paying 20% more for imported goods because of that policy. Is that your truth too? Leavitt smiled, a cold but confident grin. You love numbers, don't you? She said, her voice slicing like a knife. So let's talk about this one. Before tariffs, we imported 60% of our steel from China, costing 500,000 American steel jobs from 2000 to 2015, according to the International Economic Institute. Now, thanks to our policies, domestic steel production is up 25%. That's why I'm here, Jimmy, to defend the workers you never mention in your jokes. The studio shook with applause, so strong that Kimmel had to raise a hand to quiet the crowd. The camera panned to his face, his smile held, but his grip on his pen tightened, his eyes betraying a hint of panic. Kimmel tried to regain control, his tone now laced with bitterness. You're good with numbers, Karoline, but you can't deny your administration is making a mess of things. Do you ever wonder which side you're on when the world laughs at what the president says? The question landed like a bomb, and the audience held its breath. Leavitt didn't blink, her gaze piercing Kimmel, laughing. The world laughed at us when we lost millions of jobs to terrible trade deals. I stand with the Americans who've been forgotten, the workers in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Who do you stand with, Jimmy? Besides the audience laughing at your script, the crowd erupted, chants of Karoline, echoing through the studio, many standing to cheer. Kimmel tried to interject. This is a show, not a campaign rally, but his voice was drowned out by the crowd's noise. Leavitt turned to the audience, her voice powerful like a call to arms. Folks, I know you came here for fun, but you deserve more than cheap jokes. You deserve to know about the people fighting to bring jobs back, to secure our borders, to build a stronger America. That's the truth I bring here, no matter how he tries to twist it. The applause roared like thunder, overwhelming Kimmel's attempts to regain the mood. Kimmel leaned in, his voice now tinged with desperation. Truth? You call defending someone who constantly makes false claims truth? Don't you get tired of performing every day? Leavitt tilted her head, her smile now defiant. Performing? I face dozens of reporters daily, answering the toughest questions with no script, no editing team to save me like you. What about you, Jimmy? Are you tired of playing the smart guy every night, or is that just the job? The audience erupted again, laughter now aimed at Kimmel, forcing him to pause to catch his breath. Not giving Kimmel a chance to recover, Leavitt pressed on, her voice like a final sword strike. You want to talk about falsehoods? Let's talk about how you edit words, twist the truth to make everything a joke. You don't care about Americans, you care about ratings. I'm here to defend the people you ignore, and I won't let you turn that into a punchline. Kimmel tried to cut in. You're turning my show into a political forum, Karoline. But Leavitt interrupted, her eyes blazing. No, Jimmy, I'm turning it into a place where the truth is spoken, and if that scares you, maybe you should change careers. The stage felt like it was ablaze. The audience stood in greater numbers, their cheers like a tidal wave, sweeping away Kimmel's every effort. She turned to the audience once more, her voice resounding. Don't let people like him decide what you think. You're smarter than that. You're stronger than that. And we, the people working for you, won't stop, no matter how many jokes we face. The applause became a storm, many standing, chanting her name, while Kimmel sat there, his smile now a pale shadow. Kimmel tried to salvage the moment. Wow, Karoline, you sure know how to heat up the stage. But his voice was lost in the crowd's noise. Leavitt looked at him, her gaze that of someone who'd won decisively. I'm not done yet, Jimmy, she said, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. But I'll give you a chance to rethink before we go on. The camera zoomed in on her face. No fear, only radiant confidence. Kimmel raised a hand, trying to quiet the audience. We'll be back after the break, he said, his voice straining to sound upbeat, but the studio still shook with cheers for Leavitt. The stage returned after the commercial break, still trembling with thunderous applause for Karoline Leavitt, who had turned the interview into a battlefield where she held the upper hand. Jimmy Kimmel, though still sporting his signature smile, was clearly losing control. His hands gripped the edge of the desk, his eyes wavering as he tried to reclaim the atmosphere. The audience, now like a sea of people swept up in a frenzy, kept standing, chanting Karoline. while the stage lights shone directly on Leavitt, making her red suit glow like an unquenchable flame. She sat there, her gaze icy, unshaken, like a warrior who knew she had won but was still ready. Kimmel leaned forward, his tone now a mix of desperation and bitterness. "Karoline, you talk about truth, but the whole country sees you standing behind someone who's thrown the economy into chaos. Gas prices up 30%, inflation hitting 8% in the past year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You call that building?" The question was like a final arrow, aimed straight at Leavitt, hoping to make her falter. The audience held their breath, a few boos mixing with applause, awaiting her response. But Leavitt didn't blink. She smiled, a confident yet razor-sharp grin, and replied instantly, "Jimmy, you love stats when they suit you, don't you? Gas prices are a global issue. Did you know crude oil prices spiked 40% due to Middle East conflicts? But what you won't say is that we've boosted domestic oil production by 15%, creating 300,000 new jobs, per the Department of Energy. I call that building. What do you call it when you just sit here whining?" The stage erupted again, applause like a tsunami, with many audience members standing, shouting in support. Kimmel tried to interject. "Building? You're defending someone who's made us a laughingstock worldwide." But Leavitt cut him off, her voice resounding, drowning out his words. "Laughingstock? The world laughed at us when we lost millions of jobs to failed policies of the past. I'm here to defend the Americans you ignore. The miners in West Virginia, the factory workers in Indiana. Have you ever mentioned them in your jokes, or do you just laugh at things you don't understand?" The audience went wild. Cheers shaking the studio. Kimmel, now visibly cornered, tried a final blow. "Karoline, you can say whatever you want, but the country sees you standing behind someone who can't keep promises. Don't you get tired of playing spokesperson for a failure?" The question was like a bomb, and the studio fell silent for a second, all eyes on Leavitt. She stood up, slowly, her demeanor calm but radiating authority, her gaze locked on Kimmel like a final declaration of war. "Failure," she said, her voice booming like thunder. "We've brought millions of jobs back, lowered unemployment to 3.5%, the lowest in 50 years, according to the Bureau of Statistics. Failure is you sitting here, throwing stones at people fighting for this country, just to get a few cheap laughs." The audience exploded, applause like a tidal wave, many standing, chanting her name. Leavitt turned to the crowd, her eyes blazing, her voice powerful like a speech. "You deserve to know about the people working day and night to build this country, not to hear lies wrapped in laughter. I'm here for you, and I won't let anyone, not even you, Jimmy, stop that." The cheers became a storm, drowning out every other sound in the studio. But Leavitt didn't let him continue. She removed her mic calmly, not rushed, not angry, but as an act of asserting power. "I don't need your stage to speak the truth," she said, looking straight at Kimmel, her gaze sharp as steel. "I came here to represent Americans, but you just want a circus. Thanks, Jimmy, but I'm done." She turned to the audience, raising her hand like a queen addressing the crowd. "Don't let people like him decide what you think. Believe in the truth." The studio erupted, applause and cheers resounding, many standing, shouting Karoline, like a victory cry. Kimmel tried to slip in a weak joke. "Wow, looks like she didn't like my stage lights." But the scattered laughter from the audience only highlighted his defeat. Leavitt walked off the stage, her stride steady, head held high, the lights following her like a crown. The camera captured the historic moment, the studio chaotic with arguments and cheers. Some audience members raised their phones, recording Leavitt's exit, while Kimmel sat there, his smile now just a pale shadow. As Karoline Leavitt left the stage, the lights still followed her silhouette, her red suit blazing like an unextinguishable fire. The studio continued to shake with applause mixed with chants of Karoline, and debates erupting in the crowd. Jimmy Kimmel, sitting behind his desk, forced a strained smile, but his eyes betrayed his disarray. "Well, that was an interesting night," he said, trying to inject humor, but the sparse laughter from the audience couldn't mask the chaotic atmosphere. The camera panned across the crowd, capturing stunned faces, phones raised to record the historic moment, and Kimmel gripping his hands, as if clinging to what little control remained. "We'll be back after the break," he said, but the studio remained electric, no one paying attention to his closing words. Within minutes of Leavitt's exit, social media exploded like a tidal wave. Twitter was flooded with hashtags #LeavittRules and #KimmelSchooled, with thousands of posts every second. One user wrote, "Karoline Leavitt just turned Jimmy Kimmel into a spectator on his own show. Queen," alongside a clip of Leavitt removing her mic, racking up over 2 million views in 10 minutes. On TikTok, slow-motion videos of her walking off with her icy gaze spread like wildfire, set to triumphant music like a Hollywood movie. A Gen Z user posted, "She didn't just win, she dominated," with a fire emoji, garnering tens of thousands of likes. Even Instagram, typically filled with fashion posts, was overtaken by tributes to Leavitt, with captions like, "This is how you stand up to biased media." Kimmel's supporters tried to push back, but their voices were quickly drowned out. One account wrote, "Leavitt just talked without answering anything, but was met with hundreds of replies. She answered with truth while Kimmel only had jokes." Online forums like Reddit buzzed, with a thread on our politics drawing over 10,000 comments, calling the showdown the TV battle of the decade. A top comment read, "Leavitt didn't just beat Kimmel, she exposed how entertainment media twists truth for profit." Conservatives on social media hailed her as a beacon of honesty, while many neutral viewers admitted, "I don't support Trump, but Leavitt gave Kimmel a lesson." Mainstream media jumped in fast. Fox News posted that night, "Karoline Leavitt annihilates Jimmy Kimmel on his own turf," quoting her line about forgotten Americans as a victory slogan. Newsmax ran the headline, "Press Secretary crushes comedian, truth triumphs," citing Leavitt's stats, 3.5% unemployment, the lowest in half a century. Meanwhile, left-leaning outlets like CNN grudgingly acknowledged her strength but downplayed it. Leavitt may have scored points, but she dodged questions about Trump's failures. Even so, the article admitted, she turned Kimmel's stage into her own press podium. YouTube exploded with reaction videos from online personalities. A conservative YouTuber with 1 million subscribers posted an analysis, "Leavitt didn't just win, she changed how we see late-night TV." Kimmel wanted drama, but she brought truth. The video hit 500,000 views in hours. Even neutral influencers, usually apolitical, spoke up. "I didn't know who she was before, but Leavitt just made me want to learn more about White House policy." Gen Z, often seen as apathetic, flocked to follow Leavitt on social media, boosting her accounts by 200,000 followers overnight. In the studio, the audience kept arguing as the show cut to commercials. Some held up phones, sharing live clips on Instagram stories with captions like, "I just witnessed history." Others, even those not supporting Leavitt, admitted to friends, "She's tough, Kimmel didn't stand a chance." An older audience member whispered to a neighbor, "It's been a while since I saw someone speak so boldly on TV." The chaos was so intense that studio staff had to step in, asking people to sit, but cheers still erupted whenever Leavitt's name was mentioned. Backstage, Kimmel's team was in a panic. A producer shouted through a headset, "We just let her steal the show." Another whispered, "Ratings will be high, but the cost, it's too steep." Kimmel, still in his host chair, stared at the monitor, his face devoid of a smile. He knew he'd been defeated, not by a seasoned politician, but by a young woman, armed with truth and courage. Meanwhile, Leavitt, having left the studio, stepped outside with the demeanor of a victor. She didn't look back, but her eyes said it all. She had turned an entertainment stage into a battlefield, and walked away with an invisible crown. Within hours, Karoline Leavitt became a national phenomenon, not just for the showdown, but for how she turned a TV moment into a call for truth and faith. She didn't just defeat Kimmel, she made everyone listen. The night after the historic showdown on Jimmy Kimmel Live, the stage lights still blazed, but the studio atmosphere had shifted. Jimmy Kimmel stepped out with his familiar smile, but his eyes betrayed tension, as if he were entering a battle he'd already lost. The audience clapped, but the cheers lacked fervor, mixed with whispers of Karoline and last night. Kimmel sat down, looked straight into the camera, and tried to regain his footing with a joke. "Hey everyone, tonight we'll keep it lighter, because I'm not sure I can handle another fight." Laughter rang out, but it was weak, not enough to dispel the shadow of Karoline Leavitt, who had turned this stage into her battlefield just 24 hours earlier. Kimmel knew he couldn't dodge it. Social media was still ablaze with #Leavitt rules, the clip of her removing her mic now surpassing 10 million views on YouTube, and analyses called him the victim of a young press secretary. He took a breath, his voice dropping, rarely serious. Last night I had a, let's call it, a lively conversation with Karoline Leavitt. I went too far, and I want to say I respect her strength. She's a formidable opponent. The audience clapped sparsely, but the mood was heavy. Kimmel's apology, though carefully scripted, felt reluctant to many, a belated attempt to salvage his image. On Twitter, a user wrote, "Kimmel apologizing. Too late, Leavitt won by knockout." The post quickly racked up 50,000 likes, reflecting the crowd's sentiment. Kimmel had fallen. Meanwhile, at the White House, Karoline Leavitt stepped up to the press briefing podium with more confidence than ever. Her navy suit exuded calm, but her eyes still burned like the fire from the night before. The reporters, usually sharp and aggressive, seemed more cautious today, as if they too sensed her power after her clash with Kimmel. One opened, "Miss Leavitt, about your showdown with Jimmy Kimmel. Do you regret walking off the stage?" Leavitt smiled, her gaze piercing. "Regret? I went there to speak the truth, and I did. I walked off because I don't need stage lights to prove it." The briefing room echoed with rare applause from a few reporters, an unusual occurrence in that typically cold space. Leavitt's response spread like wildfire. Fox News ran the headline, "Leavitt fires back at Kimmel from White House. Truth doesn't need a stage," quoting her as a symbol of honesty. A Newsmax article praised, "In 24 hours, Leavitt turned a comedian into a lesson for all of Hollywood." Even neutral outlets like USA Today had to admit, Leavitt didn't just beat Kimmel, she redefined how a politician confronts entertainment media. On social media, Leavitt's Twitter account gained 300,000 followers, with thousands of comments from young people. "You're the role model I want to follow," or "Thank you for speaking for us." Leavitt, rarely active online, posted a single tweet. "Thank you for listening to the truth." The post garnered 1 million engagements, cementing her status as a rising star. Meanwhile, Kimmel faced heavy fallout. The show's ratings the next night dropped 10%, per preliminary Nielsen data, as some viewers turned away, calling him a failed bully. Some sponsors whispered about pulling ads, fearing damage to the show's image. Backstage, Kimmel's team held an emergency meeting, debating how to handle the crisis. One producer suggested, "No more politicians, too risky." But Kimmel, though outwardly calm, couldn't hide his frustration. An insider revealed he privately told a colleague, "I didn't expect her to be that tough." His apology, though praised by some loyal fans, wasn't enough to quell the wave of criticism. A Variety analysis wrote, "Kimmel wanted a viral moment, but Leavitt took it from him." Leavitt appeared on a Fox News interview that same evening, reinforcing her message, "We're working for Americans, the workers, the families, the people ignored by entertainment media." The quote was cited everywhere, from articles to TikTok videos, turning Leavitt into a symbol of courage. A college student posted a video analysis. "Leavitt doesn't just talk, she acts. She makes me want to get into politics." The video hit 200,000 views, showing her influence on younger generations. At the White House, Leavitt's colleagues, from advisors to staff, hailed her as the administration's sharpest weapon. A senior advisor, quoted anonymously, said, "She didn't just beat Kimmel, she gave the media a lesson." Leavitt, though busy with work, remained composed. When a reporter asked what she thought of Kimmel's apology, she replied curtly, "I don't need an apology. The truth spoke for me." The line spread instantly, printed on t-shirts and memes, solidifying her image as an unbeatable warrior. While Kimmel struggled to regain his footing, Leavitt rose as a political star. She didn't just win on Kimmel's stage, she turned it into a launchpad, forcing the nation to take notice. She became a symbol for those who believe truth can outshine laughter, that courage can defeat sarcasm. Just days after the historic showdown, Leavitt's name transcended the role of White House press secretary, becoming a symbol of courage and truth, in a world full of noise and sarcasm. She didn't just defeat Jimmy Kimmel on his own stage, she rewrote the rules, proving that a young woman with fierce conviction could make an entire media industry rethink itself. The media remained obsessed with Leavitt. Fox News called her an unquenchable fire, quoting her line about forgotten Americans as a rallying cry for a new generation. A Wall Street Journal analysis wrote, Karoline Leavitt didn't just beat Kimmel, she exposed the rift between entertainment media and reality, forcing us to ask, what are we laughing at? Even left-leaning outlets like MSNBC, though reluctant, admitted Leavitt turned a comedy show into a soapbox, a feat few could pull off. She became a topic in college lectures, where students analyzed how she used language and confidence to shape public opinion. Social media never stopped talking about Leavitt. The hashtag #Leavitt rules stayed trending on Twitter for a week, with over 5 million related posts. A TikTok video from a young woman, mimicking Leavitt's walk and voice as she removed her mic, hit 3 million views, captioned, "Learn to stand up like Karoline." Memes of her flooded Instagram, from images of her staring down Kimmel, with an icy gaze to her quote, "Truth doesn't need a stage," printed on mugs and t-shirts. One user wrote, "Leavitt is proof you don't need to shout to be heard, you just need to speak right." The post drew 100,000 likes, reflecting her influence across all ages. In a Newsmax interview, Leavitt emphasized, "I didn't fight Kimmel for personal reasons. I fought for the Americans who don't have a voice on late-night TV." The line was quoted everywhere, becoming a banner for those who felt ignored by the media. She appeared on conservative podcasts, where listeners called her the Queen of Truth, and even some neutral shows invited her to discuss the media's role. A college student, after hearing Leavitt, tweeted, "I used to think politics was dirty, but she makes me want to get involved." The post got 50,000 engagements, showing she inspired a generation. Leavitt's legacy wasn't just in defeating Kimmel, but in how she changed the national conversation. Other late-night shows, from Stephen Colbert to Jimmy Fallon, began hesitating to invite political guests, fearing a repeat of the Kimmel disaster. An Atlantic analysis wrote, "Leavitt proved entertainment media isn't invincible. One person with truth in hand can topple a comedy empire." She became an inspiration for young women, with hundreds of Instagram posts from girls writing, "Karoline made me believe I can stand up too." Karoline Leavitt was more than a press secretary. She was a warrior who turned a TV moment into a call for truth and courage. In a world full of noise, Karoline Leavitt stood tall as a flag of truth, leaving a legacy that echoed beyond any stage lights, stronger than any laughter, and eternal as the faith she brought to millions. The story of the showdown between Karoline Leavitt and Jimmy Kimmel on Jimmy Kimmel Live deeply reflects the polarization and role of media in today's American society, where truth is often overshadowed by laughter or drama. In the current landscape, where social media and television shape public perception, Leavitt's actions, standing up with confidence, using specific data like 2.3 million manufacturing jobs or 3.5% unemployment rate, to counter Kimmel, show the power of preparation and belief in one's values. She didn't just challenge a famous comedian, she exposed how entertainment media can distort truth, like when Kimmel edited her press briefing clip to make her seem flustered. Leavitt's courage in removing her mic and declaring, "I don't need this stage to speak the truth," reflects the American spirit standing up for beliefs, even against a hostile crowd. A lesson for real life, in today's American society, where debates on social media or TV can turn into emotional battles, we can learn from Leavitt how to hold ground with truth and dignity. Prepare thoroughly, like how she used data to rebut, instead of letting emotions take over. When facing attacks, like Kimmel's sarcastic jabs, respond with calm and logic, not needing to shout to be heard. Most importantly, know when to remove the mic, walk away from pointless arguments to protect your values, as Leavitt did. This lesson reminds us that, in a noisy world, truth and dignity are the greatest strengths for creating change. Hit subscribe to join us in exploring moments where truth triumphs like Karoline Leavitt's. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.